Good evening, everybody. Today I am going to be cooking out of the Bayou Cookbook, Creole cooking from the plantation country and New Orleans. It is from July of 1989, or that's when it was bought in New Orleans, Louisiana. This one I am going to do today is called sour cream chops. Now, I don't have pork chops. I normally buy like a pork tenderloin, or a pork tenderloin. This one is going to be the tenderloin, not the tender. I don't know the difference. Anyway, I usually get the big one and I cut it into pork chops, but this is the one I have. It was on sale, so I went ahead and bought this. This does tender up really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and slice these. They'll probably be about medallion size, because when you buy the pork loin like this, it's actually 2 pieces, so it's very, very tender. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. And what the recipe calls for, it calls for 6 pork chops, which again, I'm just going to slice this up into medallions, and I'll get as many as I get. If you're going to do this at home, if you've got regular pork chops, you know, I would go by that. It calls for 1.5 cups of onions sliced. I'm going to be using my frozen chopped onions that I normally do. If you have fresh onions, then again, that's probably going to be about a medium onion. I'm going to use garlic. I do have a garlic clove I'm going to use. It calls for dill seed. I don't have that, and that's not really a seasoning that I like too much, so I wouldn't use it anyway. I do have paprika. It calls for 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 cup of water, and a cup of sour cream. So I do have the sour cream. I have paprika. I am going to use salt and pepper. It just calls for salt. And even though I'm using a clove of garlic, I'm still going to use some of my garlic powder. I just like to add this. So I'm going to get this chopped up. We're going to put some oil in a pan, and we're going to brown this before we add our other ingredients. So just give me a minute. I didn't say this, but real quick, when you use pork or chicken, rinse it off when it comes out of the package and then pat it dry. You're going to need it dry so that it browns right, and you know, the seasonings and all stick to it. Okay, so what I did was I just added enough oil to cover the bottom. I've got it on high right now because it says to brown, to put these in the hot grease and the brown each side. So I'm going to go ahead and start laying these in here. I'm going to, of course, have, because I'm doing these medallions like that, I'll probably overfill this pan a little bit. But if you did the 6 pork chops like it said, you probably wouldn't have an issue. Actually, I might actually be able to do this. So anyway, I'm going to get these laid out. I'm going to brown them. We're going to get them browned on each side, and then we're going to add in all our other seasonings. We're going to cover it for an hour. The sour cream goes in last. Another thing, I know it says to wait, you know, until after you get everything browned and then you add in your seasonings, but I like to season my meat a little bit while it's cooking. I just think that adds more flavor to the meat itself. So I'm going to go ahead and put some. I'm not going to put, you know, I will add more when it's time for the gravy. But for now, I am going to put a little salt, pepper, and some garlic. And just to, the other side is browning. I'm going to flip this, get it browned, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so once you get everything browned, it says to add in, and again, this is 1.5 cups of onions and 1 diced garlic clove. I'm just going to get this stirred up real quick before I add in my water. After I add in my water, I'm going to add in a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, the paprika, and of course my water. And then we're going to cover it, and we're going to lower the temperature. I have it on high now to brown it. And you're going to have to grade, you know, kind of figure out on your stove. I'm on one of these cookers because I am in my tiny home now. But when you're on a regular stove, you probably wouldn't have to, you'd probably have to turn it down a little bit lower than me, because I have a tendency to cook it on this. I've noticed it's 1/2 cup of water. I'm sorry, I don't know if I said that. I have a tendency to try to turn it down too much, and then it doesn't cook. So it's on high now. I'm going to probably, on this, I'm probably just going to turn it down a little bit. But if you're cooking on your stove, I would probably say medium, around a medium, and cover it, because you're going to want this to tender up. So I'm just going to add me a little bit more pepper. Okay. And again, the recipe doesn't call for pepper, it just calls for salt. But, you know, I like pepper, so you don't have to add that. And then it called for some paprika, so I'm just going to sprinkle me some paprika over that and a little bit more garlic powder. So I'm going to stir this up. I'm going to cover it, and it's going to cook for an hour or until your pork chops are tender. Once that happens, that's when your sour cream goes in there. You stir it to make your gravy. Okay, it's been an hour, and these pork tenderloins are super, super tender. If you were making regular pork chops, you know, they may take a little bit longer, but using the pork tenderloin is super, super tender. So it says to add a cup of sour cream to make your gravy. I've got my rice going. It says to simmer this for 8 minutes. So by the time this finishes simmering, my rice should be done. And I will make me a plate, and we will give everything a taste. Real quick, I did forget to say that during the cook time, because I've got such a big pot I'm cooking in, I did have to add about another half a cup while it was cooking. And then right before I finished up, I did add about another half a cup. So it had originally called for half a cup of water completely, but that really cooked out of here pretty quickly. So I added probably about a cup of water. Plus, I wanted enough gravy to feed everybody. I'm taking care of my parents. I've got my son. I got my grandkids. So I wanted to make sure I had enough gravy as well. So I'm going to let this simmer, like it said, for about 8 to 10 minutes. I'll give it a taste, and I will be back when it's ready. Okay, so everything's done. This has been simmering for about 10 minutes or so. I went ahead and made me some corn. And as I was making it, it reminded me, I am going to say my age here. I graduated in 1984, and the best day of school was when we had pizza and corn for lunch. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but the corn is the hardest thing I don't know why the corn tasted so good back then, but I have learned that they always put pepper in it. I remembered that. So now when I make my corn, I always put pepper in it. And that does seem to kind of like bring back some of the memories. But anyway, I was adding pepper to my corn, and it reminded me of that little story. I'm going to get me a plate made real quick, and then we're going to give it all a taste. Okay, got me a plate made, and y'all, this pork is just so, so tender. And before anybody says that looks gross, I get it. It does look kind of gross. But I did taste the juice as it was cooking, and it looked like it would taste, it tasted good. So I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to get me a piece of pork and a piece of rice in my gravy. That is so good. This meat is just, it's just so good. The gravy is good. I probably could have added a little bit more salt, maybe a little bit more garlic powder, but I like my food really seasoned. I was just trying to go as closely by the recipe as possible. But if you're going to make this, make sure you taste it. If you need to add more seasoning, add more seasoning. Get it to your taste, what you like. This is a good quick meal. It's stuff you should have in your house. I did use the pork tenderloin because I had pork tenderloin, but you can use pork chops, whichever. Like I said, made me a thing of corn with some pepper. Go back to high school. Corn's delicious. Anyway, if y'all have any questions, let me know. If not, enjoy, y'all.